Today on CodeDependent, I wanted to take a look at some dynamics of animating. No, we're not animating today. Actually, we're just giving feedback on button state. And there's a little bit of animation stuff in there just because that's always fun. So it's important to give feedback to the user about what's going on in the UI. You want to tell them not just what is happening now, but also sometimes what may happen. You want to give them a little bit of state information as they move the mouse around so that they know what actions may result if they happen to click in a certain area. So to give an example here, I have 3 buttons on the screen. The top button basically has no feedback whatsoever. You'll notice as I move the mouse in and out, there's no indication that something may happen when the mouse moves over that. And so now when I click on it, you can say, okay, I actually have a little animated click there to give you information, since you can actually hear me clicking, that in fact I clicked on the button. Now you wouldn't normally do that in a good UI. I think that would be really annoying to have a bunch of clicks floating all around the screen. But in this case, it's more of a visual indicator that something happened because the button isn't doing anything for you, right? There was no indication that the mouse is over that, and furthermore, when I actually click on it, there's no indication that anything's happened except this little silly animated click operation that I have. This button is a little bit different. There's no indication that the mouse is over the button, but there is an indication when I click on it. You can see that it changes color to sort of indicate, okay, the button changed state as I clicked. So now you have 2 indications. You have that strange animated click label flying around, and you also have the change in the appearance of the button itself as I click and as I release. And then finally, we have this button, which is actually the standard button that ships with Flex SDK, where it gives you indication of both things. It gives you indication of the mouse being over the button, and it also gives you an indication by a different appearance of the button that we've actually clicked on the button, in addition to the click label flying around the screen. It's important to give this kind of information to the user because otherwise they may not know when they click that something will happen, and they may not know if something happened, why it happened, right? So you need to give a little bit of advance notice to the user what state the application is in. In this state, the application is in the state of, if you click here, then something will happen. There will be a click operation that may, start some process running or whatever, right? So you don't need the click, the animated click label, but you do need an indication that something is going to happen here, right? So the other element I wanted to talk about, just because I tend to do that, is the animation of the click label. So in this case, don't do this at home. Don't run the click animation, but it's kind of interesting to see how it works. So when we click on any one of these buttons, we call our click handler function, which is defined above. And we say, okay, well, we're going to create a new label, and we're going to give it the text of click. We're going to set style of this thing, give it an appropriate color. We're going to randomize the color here, and we're going to set that color on the object. We're going to set the location of the label so that it's actually centered around the area where we clicked on. And we're going to create 2 animations. We're going to create one that fades the label out over time and another one that moves it. So if we take a look at those animations, they are declared down here. So we have a fade that's defined here. We're going to change alpha from whatever it is now, by default it's 1, to 0. So it's going to be fading out from fully opaque to fully transparent over time. And when the effect ends, we're going to call this end handler, which is defined up here, which actually removes the label from the scene, right? So we don't want all these invisible labels stacking up in there. So we only want the label around for as long as we're running the click animation. And we're going to define an easer here, so we're going to be easing out over time on our fades, and we're going to last for 2 seconds on the fade. And then we have this move operation. It's going to be defined with the same easer and the same duration of 2,000 milliseconds. And then we need to actually define the elements on the movers to tell it where to move X and Y over time. And in this case, I just wanted to move it randomly around this area. And so we're going to randomize a number and then basically move it within 50 pixels of, in any direction, 50 pixels from where we started. And then we play the fader and we play the mover, and they're going to play in parallel and both move and fade the object out over time. Okay, so all fairly basic, but you'll notice an interesting thing about the label. And I noticed this, I sort of had it running for a while, and then eventually I realized there was kind of a funny dynamic here. I click, the label plays, and you'll notice how the button actually came back to the up state as the label is animated. You can see I'm not actually moving the mouse, then why is the button changing color? And what if I wanted to click several times? So I'm actually clicking several times, but I'm not getting another click animation in the middle. Well, it should be firing once per click, right? Because I haven't defined anything different in there. And it turns out that the label has actually inserted itself as a UI element between the mouse and the button itself. And that's doing two things here. One is that the button is no longer registered as being over the button. The mouse is no longer registered as being over the button because now it's over the label instead, which is sort of interposing between the button and the mouse. And the other is that when I click on the button again, if the label is under the mouse, I'm actually clicking on the label instead of the button. So the thing we need to do here is to actually disable mouse operations for the labels. So we can say click label mouse enabled equals false. Try this again. And now when I hover over here, I get the hover feedback. When I click, the hover feedback doesn't change because I didn't move the mouse and the label is no longer in the way. And furthermore, if I click many times, I actually get one animation per click that I'm running. So it's a very silly effect. I wouldn't suggest you do this on your buttons, but it was interesting to see how it works in the demo case that I wanted to show here. If you want to check out the code for this application or other related applications, check out my blog at graphics-geek.blogspot.com.